Once
Okay,
every 20.
let's
So I'm
get
so
going.
glad you moved.
This is Susan Lang of the Peregrine, and welcome to our Wordsmith and Peregrine open mic combined reading. And we are going to have another wonderful reading. I just can't believe the good readings we've been getting on Zoom of all things. And so I'm going to turn this over to Dee, who has a list, and we'll be calling on the readers. And so take it over. It's all yours, Dee.
Okay. I did these kind of randomly, so our first reader is going to be Sharon Hansen. Welcome, Sharon.
Thank you, Dee. Well, I had submitted to the Central Arizona Writers a couple poems and a few short stories, and got the notice that my poems had been selected for Best Poems 2021, but I didn't hear anything about my shorts. But I ordered a book anyway, just to support the group, and was quite surprised to find that 3 of the 5 pieces I had submitted were accepted. So I'm going to read a little bit of The Hanging Gardens, which is actually a story about me, but I changed the name for so I'll read 5 minutes of it. There's only one piece of your chocolate torte left, Maury said, sliding her eyes sideways at Louise and lifting one eyebrow. And I should have it. After all, you need to be especially nice to me, as I'll probably go to prison when you die. They both laughed at her statement, their private joke. Her reference comes not because she'll have killed Louise, no. And it won't be because she indulged in some provocation that assaults conventional mores or sensibilities. Well, okay, I'm lying about that bit. Maury will have. Maury has promised to lodge Louise's dead and naked body in a tree for vultures to eat. So she will be committing an illegal act unless it becomes permissible to drape a dead body from a birch branch. She pledged herself to that undertaking as Louise finds all current disposal practices unnatural. Indeed, most procedures in vogue void the natural cycle of life from death. As Hamlet said, a man may eat fish with the worm that hath eat of a king, and eat of the fish that hath fed of that worm. That's all Louise wants, an organic option. She's eaten birds and animals all her life. Her mantra says it all. When she dies, let them eat her. That desire removes cremation for her cadaver. The thought of burning into a greasy heap of dirty black cinders makes her flesh creep. Quivers of disgust shimmied up and down her spine when she heard about the potential to rid the world of the dead by dissolving them in lye and flushing them down the drain. Talk about putting the grim in Grim Reaper. The thought of using alkaline hydrolysis, an industrial solution on human bodies, offends her deeply. So does burial in a parking plot. Stuck in one place for eternity. Yuck! Louise loves to travel. She'd prefer her family take her corpse on a last vacation, maybe to Alaska or Hawaii. Stuff her into an extra strength, hefty bag with some dry ice, toss it into a car or a steamer trunk, and away they go. After hoisting Louise into the embrace of a towering pine or a palm tree, they'd enjoy snow and skiing or sun and surf. Her second mantra, let's put some F-U-N fun into funeral. Yes, give her any natural choice. If not a tree, maybe the sea. Groceries for the birds or food for the fishes. Either would be fine. The sea seems a particularly sanitary solution. Hordes of humans drown in the sea, but have you ever read about it in a pollution report? No, because the bodies rot away or are consumed. Life from death, the continuation of the natural cycle. Consider the advantages to disposal at sea, such as hiring hearse boats and their crews to ferry the dead and family to plunge points. Such a scheme could revive a part of the flagging American economy by offering a whole new line of work for downsized cruise line personnel. Think of the possibilities. Get a tan, dance under romantic starry skies, plop granny in the sea. Whole families relishing their time together while saying a fond goodbye. If they jettison corpses 1 per mile, dropped like pearls off a string, the vast oceans would never fill up. Even a plethora of dead from plagues or major catastrophes could easily be accommodated. Consider the ripple effect. With the injection of an increased protein diet, our vanishing sea life would prosper and reproduce more fish to feed hungry living humans. Still, Louise prefers the spruce tree to the sea. Although if this method catches on, logistic problems may crop up. What if large members of dead drip like icicles on oaks along neighborhood streets? First, it'd be ghoulish to see bodies suspended from tree limbs by rigor mortis elbows, especially on maple-lined boulevards close to home. And second, birds and beasts removing flesh from the dead could be problematic. Vultures, ravens, crows, and scavenging beasts scare school children. Well, there's more. I've read about half of it. So that's my 5 minutes.
Well, we would all need to put the fun back in funeral. That was really entertaining. I want to remind people that if you're not reading, to mute yourself, and then you can unmute afterwards. The next reader I have up is Gretchen Phelps. Is she here?
No.
No, okay.
No.
Okay, then we have Lori Christensen, please. Welcome, Lori.
Hi, everybody. Well, I have 2 poems to read to you, and I'm going to read them in order of written. The first one is called The Likeness of Now. A year ago, I was packing to leave for Europe. I've been house sitting around the world, and I had the good fortune, I thought, of being given for the winter and spring a 9-bedroom, 8-bath villa in Tuscany, in the little town of Montisi. So you think of the picture postcards in Tuscany, and there's some very beautiful things. The house was the villa was beautiful. And there's some things I learned while I was there. I was very lonely, actually. I don't speak Italian. And, but anyway, I wanted to share with you this poem that I wrote just a few days into my sojourn there. And here it is. Bells ring in the distance. In hillside towns I cannot see. Smoke rises in the morning from chimneyed homes across the valley. Down the hillside, below the villa garden, orchards grow in winter sun and shade. A dry stream bed marks their descent, while another vein ascends the next hill. Joined neighbor to neighbor by bells and smoke and land, people here live, while I observe apart, not a part of. I too will disappear like sound Somebody
We lost
muted
your,
me.
we lost your sound.
Yeah, it said the host muted me. I won't take it personally. Okay, so
Susan, go on.
I don't know where I stopped or where you,
Not
Susan,
of,
Just
not
go back about four
join, okay,
lines. And
join,
I think something happened on this end. There was a big box came up on my screen, but it's gone now.
joined neighbor to neighbor by bells and smoke and land. People here live while I observe, apart, not a part of. I too will disappear like sound and smoke, not meant to linger. Quiet, to live a small life here for a moment, then gone. Time and gravity, have your way with me. Wisp of smoke and peal of sound, teach me to rest in the lightness of now.
Very lovely.
Thank you. It was a melancholy time. Well, this next poem is just a poem inspired by a GIF. I'm going to try to show you the GIF. I was in New York City several months ago having coffee and bragging to somebody through a text that I was in New York City having coffee. And so I found that GIF. And of course, as you can see, again, it's all about coffee. That's a coffee pot. Anyway, I wanted to, so I then wrote this poem. Again, a poem inspired by a GIF. Yes, I have an open mind. Coffee opened it for me. To the world of possibilities a cup contains. But first things first, I've heard it said in saying that, I arise from the slumber of my night to awaken my soul at the altar of my kitchen counter. There rest the objects of my affection, my devotion, my desire. I call them to life. By flipping the switch from off to on, they call back to me. You know what? Something's wrong. Half of my poem is not here. I don't know where it is. Do you mind if I stop and if there's time, I'll share it again
Sure.
when I find it?
That works.
Okay, sorry
that
about
sounds
that.
fine.
Thank you. I'll mute.
Okay. Thank you for half of your poetry. That was really nice. Our next reader is going to be Charlie Gullett.
Okay, can y'all hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Hey, this is from some songwriting research that I did last year for a folk song. Both the song and the prose are called The Ghosts of Guerrero. In a small town in an out-of-way area of Springfield, Illinois, inside the State Military Museum at Camp Lincoln, lays an artifact of a most unusual nature. Made of cork, it is a rare 19th century prosthetic leg. The story of the cork leg begins with American acts of illegal immigration into Mexico in a town you never heard of in a time you do not remember. Initially founded via royal decree by the King of Spain in 1750, the border town of Guerrero was built on a picturesque backwater tributary of the Rio Grande and Salado River. Spanish architects were secured to plan the town's design. Its Zocala, a sort of town square, the Catholic mission, and the governor's palace were the finest on the frontier and became a focal point for both religious and cultural leadership in the region for over 200 years. Located just beyond the extreme southern tip of Texas, their Catholic mission eerily resembles another even older Texas mission about 200 miles to the north, Mission San Antonio de Valero, a place Americans know well as the Alamo, and the legend of a man named Antonio de Padua Maria Severino Lopez de Santa Ana y Perez de Lebrón. Those folks really know how to name babies. Once the revolutionary hub attempting a failed coup to overthrow President Santa Anna, the forgotten little Guerrero was flooded in 1953 as a result of hydroelectric dam construction and became what is now known as the Atlantis of Mexico. Once a thriving community, Guerrero is now a submerged ghost town known as Guerrero Viejo or Old Guerrero. As the town was deluged by the river, the 3,000 inhabitants moved to a new location, and everyone thought that would be the end of it. But for many years after the 1953 flooding, Guerrero's previous inhabitants have carried on a rather unusual ritual. When waters recede during annual maintenance on the dam, the residents make a trek back to their old homes and shops in Guerrero, wash the walls, sweep the halls, light the streets with luminaria, and they throw an old-time fiesta with dancing in the streets to honor the fading memory of their ancestral home. Like much of southern Arizona today, Guerrero Viejo is not a recommended destination for tourists, as it is largely controlled by drug cartel and human trafficking operatives. The area has a long history of lawlessness. Civil disobedience in the area has been rife ever since Stephen Austin's colonists industrialized civil disobedience in the early 1800s. Mexican requirements of American immigration included religious conversion to Catholicism and adherence to all Mexican law, both roundly ignored by Austin's colonists, creating an ugly specter of illegal immigration of Americans. At the time, the geographic buffer zone around Guerrero was viewed as a type of comprehensive immigration control. A fence on the American-Mexican border was not considered at the time. In 1838, Mexican General Santa Anna engaged the invading French at Veracruz, but his assault failed and he made a retreat, at which time he was hit in the leg by cannon fire. Shattering his ankle, it required amputation of much of his leg, which, by the way, he ordered buried with full military honors. During his recovery in Mexico City, the cork leg was custom built to his specifications. One day during the Mexican-American War in 1847, Santa Anna removed his leg for a brief siesta when the Americans suddenly attacked his position. In yet another rather too hasty retreat, Santa Anna left his cork leg behind on the dinner table, and it became a spoil of war. The cork leg was captured and subsequently held by American troops from the 4th Illinois Infantry and returned with the troops to Illinois. A second leg, a so-called peg leg, was also captured by the 4th Illinois and was reportedly used by the soldiers as a baseball bat. Santa Anna was to be re-elected president of Mexico an astonishing 10 times before he finally retired and settled in New York City's famed Staten Island. The cork leg found its permanent home in Springfield after being rescued from ex-soldiers of the 4th Illinois who were using it for beer money in hotel bars, selling opportunities for tourists to handle the leg for a nickel a pop. Santa Anna spent his last years attempting to organize yet another revolution in Mexico. The revenue stream for the new revolution was intended to import fruit from his native Veracruz, a sticky substance called Manacara chicle. Santa Anna hoped to use Manacara to replace expensive rubber in carriage tires. In the interim, he flim-flammed an imaginative American scientist and inventor to produce the tires. In the process, the scientists purchased a large shipment of Manacara as a show of faith in the ailing dictator. The scientist's name was Thomas Adams. Although Adams' tire experiment failed, he noticed Santa Anna had the habit of chewing the Manakara chicle. Adams tried it himself, added a bit of sugar to it, and decided he might recover some of his losses by marketing the chicle in small bite-sized packages. He called his new entertainment food chiclets. Mechanical vending machines first made their United States debut in 1888 when the Thomas Adams Chewing Gum Company installed machines on the subway platforms in New York City and vended their new Tutti Frutti flavored chewing gum, the first commercial chewing gum ever produced. The company was eventually absorbed by the Wrigley Corporation, who was inspired by the success of Tutti Frutti to market Juicy Fruit brand chewing gum. Ironically, in the 1960s, Wrigley changed the composition of its chewing gum from chicle back to synthetic rubber, which is now cheaper to manufacture. William Wrigley's gum fortune allowed him to first invest in and then to purchase outright in 1930 the Arizona Biltmore Hotel, which in 2008 hosted the final campaign party for the failed McCain-Palin run at the White House. Their political platform, ironically, included immigration reform. The Arizona Biltmore is currently a major Phoenix employer of Mexican-American workers, many of whom actually have very strong opinions on illegal immigration.
Charlie, that was wonderful. Oh,
Yeah.
that was wonderful.
Fascinating.
Oh, I loved
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Great research.
Love a
Oh,
pointer.
and your sense of humor is wonderful.
Yes.
I loved it.
Very nice. Okay, I think I'm going to go next. My name is Dee Cohen. Can everybody hear me? We good?
Yep.
Okay. I have a series of, this is kind of new. I have a series of pieces with a kind of an alter ego named Mabel, and this is one of them, and it's called Mabel by Bike. Tom leans out the kitchen window. Hey, hold up. But Mabel is already at the garage, pulling open the wide wooden door, looking for her bike that's been stashed in the back for at least a year. More? She has to climb over the wheelbarrow and move the rake. And finally, there it is, jammed behind the push mower. Amazingly, the pump is there too, and the tires look flat, but okay, salvageable. Mabel squats and pumps, and yup, they're holding air. She walks the bike to the alley and climbs on. Pushing off, she's pretty wobbly. How did this happen? How did so much time pass from her last bike ride? She follows her old route through the alleyways that connect like streams, the backside of Long Beach, the place she's most comfortable. Down Orizaba, past Freeman and Obispo, she passes the rear sides of old brick houses, old wooden houses, some ramshackle with paint peeling, others charmingly covered with ivy. She's wearing a denim skirt and black stockings, hair in a bandana, just the kind of thing that makes Tom frown nowadays, just the kind of thing he loved at first. My Sabra, he called her, Israeli rebel. But now, not so much. And the creaking tires seem to echo the words, not so much, not so much. She turns on Colorado, takes it to third. Her thigh muscles are burning, but she's pedaling pretty straight now, getting the feel of things, even though the blacktop is bumpy and crisscrossed with ruts. She rides past clusters of dented trash cans and pebbles spill on the road in front of her. She can see succulents spreading from cracks in the concrete on the narrow road. She walked here with Tom when they first got together, showing him what she loved, a fire escape climbing a brick wall, plants yellowing on wrought iron, a cat stretched across a railing, tail twitching in the sun. Did he like it, this backwards look at her town? Not so much. She makes a right on Temple at this 3-story apartment building standing above all the others. She knows every house, every turn, remembering them moments before they appear, and somehow feeling that they remember her too. Yes, There's the hidden apartment tucked over a garage, ribbons of bougainvillea draping the windows. The side door of a laundry room hangs open, as always, jasmine runners wrapped around its post. Then her favorite group of streets, the lovely circle of Carroll Park, old bungalows with trellised porches. She peeks at yards through back fences, avocados scattered on lawns, hibiscus shrubs with crepe paper flowers. This is where her friend Sharon lives. Sharon, who drove her to work for a month straight during that rainy April. Sharon, who once timed Mabel's arrival down to the minute, sticking her hand between the hedges and holding a cup of coffee out for her. Mabel's seen Sharon less and less this last year. Tom liking her at first. Was that even true? But later, not so much. Not so much, not so much. On to 2nd Street, past Lindero, Kennebec, Loena. Then she crosses the thick river of Broadway, lanes of traffic flowing downtown, and over to Ocean Avenue. The sky always surprises her here, how it's unseen or unnoticed in the neighborhood streets, but opens up wide over the bluffs and the combed sand of the beach below. She rides parallel with the flat ocean, feeling its steady breeze against her side, pushing down hard on the pedals, sliding off into the next frame. Mabel, uncoupled. Thank you.
Very nice.
Nice job, sweetie.
Okay, well, that was Dee Cohen. It was okay, but needs a little work. Our next reader is going to be Danielle Clark.
Okay, great. Thank you. This is my first time with you, and I'm loving the energy. Thank you for
Welcome.
having me. Thank you. Thank you. I have 2 flash nonfiction pieces. The first one is entitled Let It Go. It was a typical Sunday in November. Sunny, 55 degrees, trees hanging onto their tan-hued leaves and others bare, having already shed them. The phone rang around 10 a.m. Hey, Dad, how are ya? I'm great. Are we still going to see your grandma today? You bet. Come on over, I said. It always amazed me how full of life Dad was in the morning. Why couldn't he stay like this? Stay sober. When I spotted the best version of my dad, like I did during our call, I always felt guilty for never trying to speak up about his addiction, for never offering to get him help. When Dad showed up, the first thing out of his mouth was, "You've gained weight." My eyebrows furrowed. You never have anything nice to say. Have you ever called me smart or pretty? A few days after my dad visited, a new movie trailer aired on TV. It was a cartoon girl named Anna who reminded me of myself when I was younger. She was witty, feisty, playful. I have to see this movie, Frozen. I couldn't explain why, but the pull to Frozen was deeper than seeing myself in Anna. Perhaps it was the silly snowman's goofy personality showing me the laughs I desperately needed in my life. Or maybe I thought the fairy tale storyline would bring me back to my youth, when princesses like Ariel and Belle gave me hope for finding the acceptance from my dad I yearned for. Later that day, I called my sister. Let's take the kids to Frozen. Well, okay, but since when do you even care about Disney movies? My breath caught. She was right. I didn't care about Disney movies, not since I was 9 years old. There was no time for fantasy when my reality consumed me. Dad not around to help with homework, to ask how my day was, to cook a warm meal for me. But for some reason, after seeing the Norwegian-inspired Kingdom of Arendelle and the cast of characters living there, I cared about the magic I had lost decades ago. I remember every detail about the day we saw Frozen. I wore a red pea coat. We browsed a craft fair beforehand, perusing homemade ornaments. My sister had hot chocolate wrapped in her hands, and I walked around with fingers bared to the cold. Deep within my soul, I knew this was a special day, but I couldn't say why. Family time was important, but spending an afternoon together wasn't new. We went to the Woburn Showcase Cinema, the same one Dad used to take us to when we were kids. After my parents divorced, Dad had custody every other weekend. He'd always take us to the movies, sometimes for one, but usually two. When Elsa sang Let It Go on top of North Mountain, I felt like I was in the cinema alone, an audience of one. She sang to me, "Okay, I will stop trying to be that perfect girl, a perfect daughter. I won't worry about what others say, what Dad says. I will let it go. I will let it go." My eyes welled up. I did the best I could to conceal my tears, the same way Dad used to when we watched a sappy movie. He'd peer over to make sure I wasn't looking, but I always saw him. Afterwards, I skipped out of the movie theater with my family, singing lyrics we could remember. I vowed to be more like Anna again, to joke, laugh, sing, to be Elsa, to let it go. For the following few weeks, the wintry scenes and soundtrack continued to fill me with joy. My intuition kept tugging at me, letting me know there was more to learn from Frozen. I just didn't know what. A month after I saw Frozen, Dad passed away from a massive heart attack after a heavy night of smoking and drinking. While at the hospital, I replayed our last face-to-face conversation in my mind, him calling me overweight and me calling him out on it. Guilt washed over me. Was I the best daughter I could have been for him? Could I have done more to save him from his alcoholism? Did my inaction cause his death? As I walked through the front door of my house, I sang Let It Go in my head. In that moment, I understood why my intuition led me to the movie Frozen. And there's that piece. Yay! Thank you. And this one is a fun one. Dirty Little Secret. We were in the car on our way to the beach. Palm trees passed by as I peered out the passenger side window. The sun was shining. My husband had just given me a wink and a smirk that said, "Let's make love later." My son, niece, and the dog were in the back seat, miraculously getting along. And I was looking good. Bronze, smooth legs, hair straightened. I was sexy and ready to strut my stuff on the white sand. I opened my magazine to kill the 30 or so minutes it would take us to get to the salty water. I took a sip of my raspberry iced tea. Everything was perfect until the urge made my nose tickle. I frantically put the magazine down as the words began to run together, looking like random letters dumped from a scrambled bag. I closed my eyes and held my breath, hoping to find focus and push the urge out of my body. As I slowly opened my eyes, the urge tugged at me. It said, "Satisfy me. Take care of me now." Another side of me retorted back, "No, not now. Not with my husband here. Not with my niece and son here. Not on this perfect day when I'm feeling like a queen. A queen and the urge do not mix." I had my addiction since I was a child. It came from my dad. He'd never tried to hide it, and so I didn't either. As I got older, I realized just how bad my habit was. Not because of frequency, but because I'd do it anywhere. Most people I discovered would do it in the privacy of their own homes, usually alone. But I did everything I could to hide my addiction, but sometimes it was impossible. I turned my head slowly to look at my husband. His eyes were focused on the road. He wouldn't notice if I handled the urge. But if he did, the Baywatch beach babe in me would be gone, in his eyes and in mine. I folded down the mirror. Pretending to look at myself, I got a glimpse at the kids. Both were gazing out the window. My niece looked half asleep. With my skin itchy and my mind compulsive, I went for it, full speed ahead. I put my finger up to my right nostril and gave my skin a small scratch. I then dug my finger in my nose, wriggling it side to side. There was nothing in there, but that wasn't the point. The urge was satisfied. I removed my finger and snuck glances at my kids and my husband, making sure no one saw anything. Phew, I was still Cindy Crawford. My shoulders relaxed and I picked up my magazine again. A minute later, I heard my niece whispering to my son. Wanting to teach her a lesson, I said, "You know, secrets aren't kind. Tell everyone what you whispered." My niece replied, "That you were picking your nose."
Mhm.
That was great. I love that.
Thank you.
They were both great. Thank you very much. Please come
Thank you.
again.
Absolutely, thank you.
Next, we're going to have Kimberly Glassman.
Okay, let's see. This is a piece called I called it Peripheralville. You don't need to visit a foreign country to run smack into unexpected cultural and environmental differences. You just need to visit or move to a different region in your own country. This is not a startling new insight by any means, and yet one is frequently re-startled to rediscover it. We moved from the Midwest, Des Moines, to the full West, Prescott, just over 2 years ago. Differences that we knew about were key drivers: more mountains, fewer soybean fields, more sunshine, fewer tornadoes and blizzards. I got my first hint of the unknown differences just a week or so after we arrived, when I mentioned to a neighbor that we had taken a short walk around the block after dinner the night before and had been surprised by how dark it was. There are 0 streetlights in our neighborhood. We laughed, reporting that we'd had to pull out our cell phones and occasionally activate the flashlight app just to keep from wandering off the pavement and into the ditch. She did not laugh. "You shouldn't be outside after dark," she warned, "unless," dramatic pause, "you are armed." Armed? Was Williamson Valley swarming with muggers? That was not in the brochure. She didn't even smile. "Cougars," she whispered. I have not seen a single cougar in 2 years, but this conversation stuck with me, as you might imagine. It has been a bit of a problem because one of the other reasons I wanted to move to the full West was that very darkness, the darkness that would reveal to me the true splendor of the night skies, more stars than I could ever have hoped to see so close to the lights of even a modest city like Des Moines. At this time of year, I am happy to welcome back the winter constellations. Orion, the hunter, rising majestically in the east around 9 o'clock. I love Orion because he's so conspicuous, so in your face. He's easy. The 3 stars of his belt marching neatly in a straight line, the manly shoulders, the dangling sword. You can't miss him. You can see him just by looking out a window if you turn off your lights. The only constellation I love more is the Pleiades, the 7 sisters, a tight cluster of stars just a bit up from Orion's left shoulder, and according to mythology, being chased across the sky every night by Orion. I love the sisters for the opposite reason I love Orion. They are subtle, nuanced. They are difficult to see if you look straight at them, but you don't need a telescope. You need guile, you need wisdom. You need to soften your focus, let your gaze drift past where you know they are. Nonchalant-like. The reward for this patience, this extra effort, is that those stars snap into view only in that averted gaze, that peripheral vision. This is because the center of your retina is composed entirely of cones, which are tuned for bright light, color, and visual acuity. The outer region of the retina, Peripheralville, is a mixture of cones and rods specialize in gathering dim light and detecting movement. Pilots are trained specifically to use their peripheral vision to scan the night sky for other airplanes. You can use yours to detect the stealthy approach of a cougar off to your left, or the 7 sisters. There they are, plain as day. And when you naturally turn to look directly at them, the stars, not the cougar, poof, they disappear. This delights me. What does not delight me is that this is not something you can experience from the safety of your living room. You really have to go outside, in the dark, where the cougars are. Many things are best viewed indirectly. A solar eclipse, of course, Medusa, absolutely. An aggressive dog, don't turn your back, but don't make eye contact either. Actually, that's probably good advice for meeting a cougar too. And fun fact, it turns out you can get fired from your job on a movie set for making eye contact with Tom Cruise. Our eyes are also easily fooled and confused. The picture of the old crone who's also a young ingenue, the vase that's also two faces in silhouette. Is it a rabbit or a duck, a cat or a fish? Most of us see one of them right away and then have to work to be convinced that there is another picture and then to see it. We have to soften our focus, relax our gaze, maybe let it drift across the drawing, nonchalant-like. Ideas can be like that too. Something you've believed for a long time, something so obvious, looks quite different when considered from a different angle. My husband used to tease me about my locking the doors when we were in the house, closing and locking the windows at night. I never locked my doors when I was home, he would tell me, and I lived in DC. Finally, I asked, and were you ever a 21-year-old woman living alone in a ground floor apartment? A new perspective, a softened gaze. We are often advised to face our problems head on, take a clear-eyed view of things. And if the problem is like Orion, that is probably a good approach. But consider the possibility that the problem is really more like the Seven Sisters. Maybe soften that glare, step to one side and look at it or around it in a new way. You might see an unexpected answer come suddenly into focus. You might see something extraordinary.
Thank you.
That was really
Wow, that was
nice.
great, Kimberly.
Thank you, dear.
Our next reader is Shirley Willis.
Oh, good.
There, I think I'm unmuted. Yes? Am I unmuted? You can hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to read a little piece that I wrote about a time when I was a first-year teacher in Maine. This is a piece that was published in this month's Maine Women, which is by women and for women about women. Christmas in Maine. Christmas story. I was halfway home, the darkest stretch of the road still ahead. The frost on both sides of my windshield created a kaleidoscope of indecision. Sleet pinged mercilessly, clogging the one working wiper. The Penobscot River on my right wound its way to the ocean, but I'd never see a thing if my banged up Opal suddenly skidded toward it. What did I expect? It was Maine after all. And what business did I have driving home from another class toward my master's degree on a night like this? I was already a single parent teaching full-time. Why couldn't I just let that be enough? Ice ridges from earlier driver's tracks pulled me into the opposite lane, then toward the river on the passenger side. The year was 1976. None of us had dreamed of cell phones. I couldn't have afforded one anyway. After rent, utilities, and my school loan payment, there was barely enough for food. I'd left the farm to make a life for us, my son Mark and me. But each semester of teacher preparation, I wondered if the money would hold out till grades were recorded before I had to go back to waitressing. Now I worried if I could put off the loan payment. And would the tuna last? Was there enough macaroni? No matter how I rearranged my payment books, no extra money jumped into my pocket. My choices narrowed as the ice threatened to obliterate my cookie-sized windshield view. I could keep driving into the storm or turn back to Bangor and stay the night with my college buddy, also a first-year teacher. My solitary wiper scraped out a steady rhythm. Steer on, turn back, steer on, turn back. The piles of snow at the end of the few driveways I passed, always so welcoming in summer and fall, were packed with snow. There was no place to turn. Tears of self-pity ran down my face and dripped off my chin. I couldn't even brush them away. I was gripping the steering wheel so tightly. On the back seat, Mark snored softly into the road sounds. His little boy smells wafted forward. Lemon drops eaten earlier, the lingering perfume of morning shampoo, the wet sog of old wool mittens. He desperately needed a snowsuit, boots, hats, and new mittens. I clicked through what I could sell. Our bicycles? Fat chance I'd get anything for them in winter. My books? Already gone. Clothes? The last time I'd even had new underwear was 4 Christmases ago. Our television? It's one channel snowed worse than what I could see through the windshield. It was so hard being on my own. Couldn't I have just gone along, sucked it up, and continued to rationalize the betrayals about my promised education? The pointed comments about serving the devil when I was caught reading any book other than the Bible, being forbidden to go to the library, counseled that writing my little poems and stories was vanity, unbecoming in a farmer's wife. This new life was to be Mark's too, his chance to grow up and decide what he had talent for, not what the farm needed and not the way the cult-like church wanted to mold him. Mark, who grew so fast, who needed longer shoes and pants and shirts. Mark, whom I was putting in danger by being out on this road. The tears ran faster and I snuffled. Mark stirred. I held my breath. The car was the only place, other than late at night in bed, where I could cry. I prayed silently. Hey, you out there. Nothing. I prayed harder, raged really. You said it would be all right to leave. You said I could do more good as a teacher. You said it would work out. So tell me what to do now. You tell me right now. For an instant, I loosened my left hand on the steering wheel and lowered my face to clear the tears. The Opal's bald tires wouldn't hold. She skidded straight for the river. Steady, Opal, I begged while scrabbling through my memory for icy road advice. Brakes? Let up on the gas? Steer into the skid? Yes. The road surface smoothed and I jerked forward, skimming the snowbank, the only barrier to a sheer drop off into the Penobscot. Terror punched my gut. Was I back on the road? A light appeared ahead. It grew, then grew faster. Then immediately a gigantic snowplow was smack in front of my headlights, flinging sand for traction. I pumped the brakes, small skid, steer, hold. Brake pedal pump. Oh, please, Opal. The tires gripped. Slowly, I guided Opal into the sand and salt path created by the plow. I went back to worrying about Mark's winter clothes. Christmas would be a choice between boots and the one thing he'd asked for, 10 boxes of Dominoes. I couldn't afford both. My relatives were too poor to help. Mark's dad wouldn't pay. After all, I was the one who left. Could I take an extra job? But where? Bucksport was so small. Besides, I already worked so many hours. Slowly, I wound along the icy road behind the plow, whimpering. But this time, I kept both hands tightly on the wheel. I drove forever before the lights of Bucksport reached us. I was never so happy in my life as I was that night to see that loud, smelly old mill town when we made the last curve. I turned away from the plow and headed up our road. The plow driver blinked his lights twice. I blinked back. It took Opal 3 tries to make it up the steep hill. I was drenched in the sweat of angst and exhaustion by the time we slewed sideways into the driveway to our tiny apartment. The path was drifted over a foot deep. Safe now, I shouted to the growling wind. Plow was nice, but I need more. Maybe I should just crawl back to the farm. Instead, I slung Mark over my shoulder. At the door, a 2-foot drift blocked our way in. Carefully, I eased Mark down to lean against my side and tried to kick away the snow with my other foot. But wait, what was that? Solid ice? A box. I sleepwalked Mark through the door and into his narrow room and eased off his 2 small boots and coat, then rolled him into bed fully dressed. Back at the front door, I dragged in the box, still wiping my tear-blown face. What? The box was packed tight with little boy's clothes, a snowsuit, boots, mittens, and a scarf, a hat, then shirts, pants, shoes, a short winter jacket, all hardly worn and really cool name brands. There were pairs and pairs of underwear and socks, carefully folded and smelling as clean as the new snow. Under everything was a note from one of my fellow teachers. My sons have outgrown all of these. Maybe some will be useful. Useful? I was redeemed. The next morning I woke to a brilliant sun and a wonderland of ice-sparkled branches. My little red opal had been pushed into the driveway, which was now cleared. 2 of my new teacher friends stood grinning on either side of Opal, shovels held high. They saluted and sauntered off. There would be Christmas. It was Maine, after all.
That was wonderful.
And
Shirley.
then, thank you. That was a little cheery thing coming from me. And then they asked me to write a little bit more. And so there's just this last paragraph that I wrote. In the years since the 1976 Christmas, I have experienced over 3 decades of continuing joy in working for and with children, their parents, and other teachers. In 1989, I met Richard, my lovely, brilliant husband of 30 years, and the same kindness from Maine people continued to arrive for me at just the right times, including recently when Richard died after his long battle with Alzheimer's and finally late-stage cancer. We had been living for 12 years in northern Arizona, and when Richard knew his time was approaching, he said, "It's been a great adventure, but now it's time to go home." Today, it's like I never went away. Maine has this unerring bungee cord effect on those of us who leave, snapping us gently back just when we need to come home. So that was my little
That's
story.
lovely, Shirley. Thank
I
you.
miss Arizona, by the way. So much. I miss you all.
We miss you too, Shirley.
We
But
sure
it's just
do.
a beautiful piece. Congratulations on getting it published. That's really great.
Yeah, thank you. They also asked if I had anything else in the pipeline and would I be interested in assignments. So
Wow.
we'll see.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's really
If
great.
you ever come back.
What'd you say?
I said Arizona will be here if you ever want to come back.
Oh, I'm coming back.
Yeah, good.
Yay.
Okay, our next reader is going to be Susan Lanning. Thank you for your patience, Susan.
Absolutely. These have been just wonderful. I love coming and listening to everybody. What a great thing to do for all of us.
It is.
Okay, I have a piece that actually I wrote back in the 1980s. They were having this thing in our local newspaper. They wanted people to write essays about Christmas. So this is seasonal. And they would print the ones that they thought were particularly good. And they printed mine, which was nice. So anyway, this is called By Christmas. Each year I find myself asking the same white-bearded and forever unanswered question. What's so special about Christmas? What is it that makes the heart bulge, the senses tingle? Why the giddiness, the excitement, the insanity at this time of year? Why this mad impulse that sends us racing to spend millions on useless, overpriced doodads? An alien culture of super beings would probably consider us unstable and steer their flying saucers clear of our solar system. We dress up like fat men in red suits. We drool over animated spectacles on television. We even sing songs and flock to churches we haven't frequented since Easter. Yet from Thanksgiving until the end of the year, the whole of the US, indeed a large part of the world, goes temporarily insane. Some suggested it's the desire to relive childhood, perhaps, but often I find myself reliving imaginary childhood Christmases when the only real and vivid recollections I have are the time I woke up to see my mother filling the stockings by our beds and felt a deep loss of innocence, or the time when my sister and I found 2 Christmas dolls hidden away and fought over which one would belong to whom. I do remember going out the day before in a tractor to cut down a Christmas tree, helping Mom bake our favorite cookies, and the smell of them filling the house, the traditions that went along with the season, the slow swelling of excitement as the big day approached. But though the memories of my childhood bring a quiet smile, they aren't the recollections that come to mind when in the throes of the Christmas spirit. My first real experience of the stomach fluttering and tear-evoking joys of the season occurred when I became a teenager. Christmas was a special time because we were still a family at home then, but even more significant was my growing awareness of other people and of my kinship to them. Some thread that binds one man to another. In those teenage years, I had a youthful desire to believe all were my brothers and sisters, and that despite wars and starvation throughout the world, there was the underlying love of mankind in all of us. Isn't it marvelous how our entire personalities undergo an alteration simply because of the time of year? How the sound of a carol can soften the heart, how the blinking lights of an evergreen tree can bring a brilliance to the eyes, how the smell of pine can expand the soul, and how the look on a young child's face can cause a warm glow to invade every nerve of the body. There must be something basic in the makeup of humankind that longs for this special sort of oneness, an elusive yet compulsive drive like hunger or the will to live that moves us. Some mourn the fact that we can't sustain this heady feeling of humanity the year round, but I think it would become jaded if we tried, and Christmas would lose its brilliant glitter. After all, let's not be greedy. At least we have it for 1 month chock full of blissful, glittering excitement when we can relive the memories and joys that never actually happened and feel the stir of comradeship for people we haven't always liked. Super aliens might find us insane, but I enjoy being part of this insanity. Christmas, for whatever reason it exists, helps me get through the rest of the year.
That was really enjoyable. Thank you.
Yes, it
Oh,
was.
Thanks.
well, I thought it was apropos right about this month.
Yeah,
Definitely. Yeah.
did you notice that we have Janice
Shanks?
Shanks, yes, who hadn't,
Do we have another reader?
I don't know if she is or not, because she hadn't contacted me. So if she does speak now or well, not forever, but hold your peace.
Janice, there you go.
I know today I just thought I would just listen in, and I'll join again next time and have something to share.
Well,
Oh, thank you.
thank
Great,
you.
welcome.
Yeah.
Welcome to you. Yes.
Yeah. So our final reader, but I think after that we will have time for Lori's second poem. So first we're going to hear from Janet Hopkins.
Yay.
Janet, we can't hear you.
Okay, no, I was just getting ready. So this is a short excerpt from the mystery novel I'm writing, and it takes place up north of Prescott in the mountains near Williams. He'd spent a lifetime of isolation, voluntary, soothing isolation, but the self-imposed isolation of the forest seemed different. He'd awoken last night just after 3 a.m. He'd read that the ancients called 3 to 4 a.m. the witching hour. The Catholic Church decreed it thus in 1535 and laid down rules prohibiting activity during that time. He remembered that through the muddle of his dreams. He heard his mother choking, dying. His dream shifted to that park on the hill where she'd take him as a child. Already the drink had begun taking her from him, but he didn't know that at the time. He believed he could save her. A groan emerged from deep within his body, an inconsolable thing that crawled out of his soul. He missed her, needed her, wanted her. Great retching sobs rose from somewhere beyond. He was a small child again, wanting, craving the comfort of his mother. Once upon a time, she'd given him that. He wondered at that phrase, like a fairy tale. Once upon a time, someone loved him. Once upon a time, she cared for him. He awoke with tears streaming down his face and got out of bed to kneel by the bed with his head buried in his arms, not to muffle his sounds. Nothing could hear his cries in the sea of trees swaying with the great drafts of wind. His cries mingled with the cries of all wild things living and dying around him. He sobbed until spent. Lydia, his beautiful mother and friend, he'd done the only thing that could save her and himself. He lifted his head as the weird sounds of a pack of coyotes surrounded the RV. Their cries filled the space left by his tears and echoed the savagery and blood on his hands. In the dark, he could see the hunt, feel the blood drip from their mouths and his fingers. He wanted to run with them and howl at the moon. He downed 2 pills and drank a few swigs of vodka to find sleep again. In the morning, his senses had returned. He laid his nocturnal emotions on the witching hour and again thought of Lydia, her beliefs in voodoo and magic that he scoffed at, but believed in the dark. Damn her. That's it.
Very touching.
Well,
you.
I'm hoping we get to hear more of it later on.
Yeah, definitely.
You have a
Okay, so
title?
now I think we could head back to Lori for your poem. Thank you, Lori.
I just wondered if she had a title for the book yet, a working title.
For my book,
Yes.
it's called The Ink Spot.
Okay, I found this in its entirety. Again, a poem inspired by a GIF. Yes, I have an open mind. Coffee opened it for me to the world of possibilities a cup contains. But first things first, I've heard it said in saying that, I arise from the slumber of my night to awaken my soul at the altar of my kitchen counter. There rest the objects of my affection, my devotion, my desire. A high priestess at work. Dark roast, incense of light, ground fine, it glistens on my spoon. Mount Promise is its name. Ah, sweet mysteries are measured there, then poured out into the filter that holds back only that which is unholy. Chalice, goblet, mug, cup, they await, alert, aloft, trembling, wondering, wanting my touch, to be chosen today to hold the elixir of life. Kettle, black, petite and demure, quiet, she waits to roar, confident in her role of this romance ritual, she is full. Water, her mission to hold, to heat, to release. Ready, she is plugged into source electric fire. I call them all to life with the flip of a switch from off to on, and they call back to me with the answer the red light of reassurance. Yes, life goes on. The possibilities are endless, but only after coffee.
Yeah. Wonderful, funny,
Whoa.
and
Yeah,
real.
really good.
So true.
I'm going to turn it back over to Susan now.
Well, thank you. I don't have anything to say or do, but I just want to thank everyone. It was so wonderful. And thank you for the comments. Danielle made some wonderful comments to people. Little,
Yes.
yes. So
Yeah.
this was great. And I'm wanting to do it again in January.
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
And I just wanted to ask you if you were interested, because sometimes I send things out to people that I don't know if they want them or not, but I got there was a Facebook invitation to go to a Zoom reading with Charles Baxter, came from Pam Houston, and it was wonderful. And I wondered if something came up like that again from her, if you guys would like to at least see if you could do it. It was wonderful. Charles Baxter is a wonderful writer.
Oh,
So-
definitely.
I
I'd
would
love to see that.
definitely,
Okay, good.
definitely.
And all right, so good. And have a wonderful Christmas. It's going to be
Merry
weird.
Christmas,
It's going to be
yes.
weird,
Yes.
but it can still be wonderful.
Yes. Yeah.
And
It
so I will see you. Let me see what the date will be. The third Wednesday will be, where is that? Third Wednesday, oops, that's November. That's not it. Will be on the 20th of January.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
Okay, sounds
we will
great.
Okay.
we'll
Hey,
see
that's
you
a busy
then.
day. There's somebody getting inaugurated that day.
Yes,
Oh,
there
yeah.
is.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
maybe
We'll
we
have to
should.
write presidential things.
Do you think we should we move it should we move it? or-
Yeah, yeah, please.
No.
Yes.
No,
Yes.
he's not
No.
getting inaugurated all day.
No,
And
we really do because,
the
yeah,
other thing,
could we move it the week before or the week after? Just for January?
That's fine with me.
I don't know. I have mixed feelings about that just because it's like happens every month.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kind of
well,
hard
the
to
thing,
move it.
I really think this is too big a deal not to leave that day open. You don't know what's going to happen, and we need to leave it open, I think. Or the rest of you can go, and I just won't be there next month. That's okay. No, that's all right. We can't all make it every month.
and it's just an hour of the day. So
Yeah.
so I mean, I would prefer to, but I think it does start a trend when you move it that
Yeah.
Yeah.
we
It
usually
could
move
add
it
confusion.
Break. You may need a break from all the
hoopla.
a poetry break.
Yeah, well, okay, if something serious is going on, then you don't have to show up,
Yeah.
and you don't have to show up
Okay.
anyway.
Oh, but we love to.
Yes,
Yes.
and I wanted to say that don't miss the sky. We talked about the skies. We had poems and about the skies, but there's a wonderful occurrence that's going on now, but it will be culminate I think the 21st, right about the solstice, and
Yeah.
that's the two planets, Jupiter
yes.
and
Saturn.
Saturn are becoming close together, so that
Yeah.
they'll be like one big bright Christmas star.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah.
So keep your eyes.
Hopefully
The
it
star in the
is.
east, and look to the east.
Yes. Hopefully
Yeah.
it's promising good things.
Except it's in the west
Yeah.
now.
Oh,
It's in the west,
Oh, okay.
right after sunset. So
Okay.
anyway, so take a gander. Well,
Thank you.
thank you, everyone.
Absolutely. Okay,
Good.
nice to see you. Merry Christmas.
See you next month. Merry Christmas.
Merry
Merry
Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Bye-bye, everyone. It
Funny
was really
story.
inspirational.
Bye.